We're going to talk about now one of your choices for this year, which is clearly a progressive rock album, an album from the progressive rock genre. But I think many people would point to this album and say this is when progressive rock began to turn, when it jumped the shark in a sense, when it got too big for its own boots. And the album in question is, of course, Jethro Tull's A Passion Play. Now, I love this record, but you've picked it, Tim, so tell us about this record and why it means a lot to you.
Well, for me, it's still one of my favourite Jethro Tull albums. I think it's one of the most musically and lyrically detailed albums by the band. I also think there's rarely a moment where it's not interesting. For me, Thick as a Brick, although it's a great album and it has a fantastic central theme, it suffers from the fact that there's a lot of jamming. This, by comparison, seems meticulously plotted out lyrically and musically. There's some interesting use of new technology. It's one of the first Jethro Tull albums to use synths. The flute's been abandoned and you have saxophone, so it has a very different textural quality at times. And bar the kind of self-consciously quirky theatrical interlude, The Hare Who Lost His Spectacles, I think it's a wonderful statement of intent, really. And it's Anderson at his best as a composer, a singer, a lyricist.
You see, I'm not sure I completely agree with you, because I think Thick as a Brick is a superior record for the simple reason that it has better tunes, more memorable melodies. I think A Passion Play suffers slightly from being slightly overwrought. Conceptually, it kind of dominates the melodies, and I think that's part of it. Part of the issue for me, the conceit of the theatrical framework, I think sometimes for me just drags it down a little bit. It feels a little bit too self-important sometimes. But I do agree with you in a sense. There's something wonderful, and we've talked about this before. I think we talked about this in the 1980 episode as well. There's something wonderful about an artist kind of reaching for the stars and being completely fearless in terms of being seen, potentially seen as being pretentious or over-ambitious. And this is an example of an album like that, isn't it?
Absolutely, but I don't think he's making compromises anywhere, lyrically or musically.